Hi everyone, this is Phil Travis. This announcement is for week 7 of American History Part 1. This week we are going to be examining the War of 1812. In our textbook, our main textbook by Eric Foner, we will be reading Chapter 8. There's no test this week, there's no quiz this week, no papers due this week. Those of you that did the first paper option, I'll have those graded soon. We do have our usual graded discussion forum. Remember, for full points in the discussion forum, I want to see you posting or replying. I want to see activity by Thursday at the latest. And I want to see 2 days of activity during the week with a total of 1 post, 2 replies, unless otherwise noted. So this week, reading Chapter 8, we're looking at the War of 1812. I have a weekly recorded lecture up for you on the War of 1812, and I go into some depth, probably greater depth than the reading does this week, so it should complement that pretty well. The War of 1812 is a very interesting time in American history. In one respect, it's a conflict that probably very few Americans know a whole lot about. But in the other respect, it's a conflict fought between the United States and the British that was really fundamental to America in the preceding century and beyond. The War of 1812 created many symbolic leaders of the United States, many symbolic moments for the United States. It created the significant figures like William Henry Harrison, who would become president later for his service in the war. Andrew Jackson, who of course became president later, built largely on his service in the war. The War of 1812 was the war in which the Star-Spangled Banner was written. And so in this respect, the War of 1812 in a lot of respects was a sort of second American Revolution. It was a moment where the United States, in a way, had a second founding. It birthed a new era, a second era of founding figures that would lead the United States for the next half century. It created many symbolic ideas like the Star-Spangled Banner. It created many leaders who had a sort of nostalgia behind their service in the War of 1812, catapulting them into power in the future. The War of 1812, too, of course, you would be hard-pressed to call that war an American victory. Was it an American loss? Probably a stalemate. Technically, on paper, the War of 1812 is a stalemate. The Treaty of Ghent, which ended the war, the end of 1814 is when the diplomats met in Ghent, Belgium. The Treaty of Ghent really was a push, a stalemate. Neither side gained anything greatly. Neither side really agreed to deal with the grievances that led up to the conflict, or to give anything as a result of those grievances. It was really a stalemate. But in the war was almost exclusively fought in and around the United States. There were numerous naval battles in the Great Lakes regions. There were battles fought in areas of Canada. There were, of course, famous battles fought on Lake Champlain as well, in the areas around there. Of course, also, the United States had its capital destroyed. The Capitol building was burned. And of course, it's during this war where, when the Capitol was being ransacked, James Madison famously took up command with an artillery unit for a brief moment. Or the president, James Madison, for a brief moment was said to have taken command with an artillery unit. And his wife, Dolly Madison, was said to have saved one of the most famous portraits of George Washington. And of course, the Star-Spangled Banner, written by Francis Scott Key, outside of the area surrounding Maryland during the British siege there. So the War of 1812 was really an important moment for America. It was a moment in which the United States got into a war with Britain that maybe it would have been wiser to avoid, and the war resulted largely in a stalemate, but it also resulted in a really fundamental moment in the United States, the birthing of new leaders, in a way, new symbolic ideas about the country, And in a way, it acted as a sort of second American Revolution and gave rise to a next half century of American leadership up into the American Civil War. This week's factoid relates, of course, to the War of 1812, and please watch my weekly lecture for more information, more discussions of some of the events leading up to and during the War of 1812. Here's my factoid, though. Remember, email me this factoid no later than Wednesday by midnight. Get that extra bonus point toward a test score that gets added at the end of the term. The factoid is this. The War of 1812, in a lot of respects, made Andrew Jackson's career. Andrew Jackson became a hero from the War of 1812. Eventually, he'd become president. He would be associated with a whole era, the Jacksonian era. And perhaps more than anything else, that was associated with Andrew Jackson's famous triumph in the Battle of New Orleans, fought at the beginning of 1815, in which he defeated the British in this battle, the Battle of New Orleans. Well, here's the interesting fact about this battle. The battle was actually fought and won after the War of 1812 had really effectively ended. This battle, which really the War of 1812's most symbolic historical battle, is the Battle of New Orleans. In the 20th century, in the 1900s, there were songwriters that wrote songs about the Battle of New Orleans. It's an incredibly symbolic moment in American history, the Battle of New Orleans. It happened after the war was basically over. The news of the treaty had not yet arrived. They didn't know it was over, but effectively that battle, despite how significant it is to the symbolism of America moving forward, was actually a battle that was pretty much, in terms of the grand scheme of things, was pretty much inconsequential because effectively the diplomats had already agreed to a treaty that would end the war. So the War of 1812, Andrew Jackson and the Battle of New Orleans, a very, very famous American battle, but one that actually occurred after the war had effectively ended. All right, everyone, let's have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope everything's pretty clear. Please send me an email if you need to talk to me, or you can come by my office, of course, if you need to set up an appointment or a phone conversation if you need. But let's have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions. Email that factoid to me no later than Wednesday by midnight.